That's pretty good stuff. Always thinking about fishing. And one thing I'm thinking about today is how to set up a rig to get it down deeper. And when do you use split shot? How do you use split shot? There's a couple of different ways to get your flies down deep whenever you're nymphing. Whenever I first started nymphing, we didn't have all sorts of heavy flies. We had, just flies that weren't even weighted at the time. In order to get them down, we started using lead wire, and then we started using bead heads and tungsten. And now there's all sorts of options. And so the way that you rig, you hear about drop shotting, you hear about adding split shot to the line, adding a tag and then putting it on there. What is the best way to go about getting that fly down there? Because oftentimes it's very important to get down to that zone where that fish is feeding, and especially if you need to get it down fast. Many times we think that our flies are actually getting down in front of the fish, and in actuality they're just completely over their heads. They don't see it, they don't pay attention to it, and we miss the opportunity. So I'm going to go over a few things here with you in a few minutes that will show you at least the way I set up a rig so that I can get the appropriate drift and I can get those fish looking in the zone where they're feeding. But before I do that, I just want to have a sandwich. Got honey maple turkey with white American cheese and mayo, a couple of Grillo's pickles. If you've never eaten those, they're absolutely fabulous, and hot red cherry peppers. So they go well with my Two-Hearted IPA. All of our rivers are blown out, all of our creeks are blown out. We've had such torrential rain in the Appalachians. Western Pennsylvania, West Virginia experiencing a lot of flooding, especially West Virginia. So, our hearts go out to those people who have really suffered. A few years ago, it's been really bad down in McDowell County, West Virginia, and other places in the southern West Virginia, where it just decimated those areas, and it's actually doing it again. It's really hard to conceive of losing everything, but that's where Elkhorn Creek is, down there in McDowell County. And you just wonder, how does it affect the fish and the fishery itself down there as well. But in any event, we're experiencing a lot of rain, thunderstorms. I'll show you a little clip in a minute. So a drive that I had yesterday on my way home, lots of lightning, lots of thunder, lots of rain. Nothing else to do here but create videos and content that is helping me think about fishing so that whenever I get back out there, I'm ready to go. Well, I'm almost finished with my sandwich. And my pickle's really good too. I'm gonna run you through my setup, which I've used all sorts of setups. Sometimes it's appropriate just to use the weight of the fly itself, depending on how fast the water's moving, how deep you want to get it, how long your leader is. That's a very important thing. Whether you're using a floating poly leader, whether you're using a sinking poly leader, and the type of fishing that you're doing. More often than not, I'm using a floating poly leader, and off of that, I'm building the leader from a tippet ring. And so I take that first stretch of line from the tippet ring, typically from a 3X, about 5 feet. So I measure out, basically I take from my reel right here at my tippet bar, and I pull it out and then I extend it out, and usually however tall you are, it's pretty close, right? From fingertip to fingertip, how much line you're pulling out. So I typically go 5 to 6 feet of 3X, and then at that point I tie on a 4X, and I use a double surgeon or a triple surgeon's knot, excuse me. A lot of people use blood knots, and I love blood knots, but they're very tough for me to tie, and especially as I'm getting older, my eyes, I require glasses, and it's just more and more difficult to tie out on the creek, whatever you're tying up. So what I'll do is I'll tie a triple surgeon's knot, and I'll leave about this much of a tag end on my 3X. And with that, it's hanging down, it's still heavy, and from there, I'm going to build on about another 3 feet or so of 4X. And that's going to be, you know, to my transport fly, whether that be if I'm doing a dry dropper or if I'm doing a heavier nymph, which is my point fly, and then tying on to the hook shank of that one, you know, another 12 to 18 inches, something like a size 14 flashback pheasant tail. So that's sort of the setup that I would use. And that gives me the option, whenever I have that tag end up there at the end of the 3X where it's meeting the 4X, in a position that I can put a split shot on that tag end. It allows two different things to happen. One, it's saving your line, okay? And so if you were to put that same split shot on the line itself, say closer to the point fly on your 4X, and you crimp it down, you're compromising the integrity of your line and your tippet, right? So if you were to get a larger fish on, which we, you know, if you're going deep, you're usually going for bigger fish, that little bit of pinch might be enough during the fight on a heavy fish in a real head thrash to pop your line, and he'll break you off. And that's not good, right? I mean, we all want to land that fish, and you want to be confident in what your setup is. So to avoid that, I use the tag end that I tied during the triple surgeon's knot. I'll cut the other one off with my snippets. And then what I'll do is on that tag end, you can continue to use it. I'll add as heavy of a split shot or double split shot as necessary to drop that line down really fast. And that means that that point fly does not need to be as heavily weighted either, because if it's not, then it'll float more naturally behind that, you know, split shot that's bouncing along the bottom, right? And you might have heard the term drop shot. Drop shot is sort of similar because you actually, below the fly, you're dropping, you know, a similar tag, and then you put your shot onto it. I don't like that setup because oftentimes that gets you snagged. And this other way, it's sort of like way ahead of it, it gets it down, and then that way it can float behind what you have going on the bottom, right? And so you can use a lighter weighted fly. If it's really heavy water, fast water, then you want to get it down really fast. You can really load up that tag, and you can have, you know, say if you're using a 101, like a stonefly, a 101 with rubber legs, Cat 3 makes them, you know, other you know, folks make them, but that's a very common fly nymph pattern to put some sort of a bead head on, right? A tungsten bead head. And usually it's a bigger fly. It might be like a size 10 or 12. And then that, you know, 12, 18 inches behind that, you can have a pheasant tail. And you don't even need to have it weighted because everything else has pulled it down, and then that thing's sort of fluttering behind everything. And more often than not, that stonefly becomes an attractor, and then that pheasant tail is actually what you're fishing with, right? So anything that you can get away with your the weight of your fly line and lures and your shot, and still have your indicator float. What's going on? So what I wanted to do is actually tie on my tag with a triple surgeon's knot, and then add on a piece of split shot as a demonstration to help you understand what I was just explaining in the video. So just for purposes, I have some 1X here, not sure if that you can see it, right? I mean, it's very thin, and 2X, and then I have a little piece of split shot that, you know, I will be adding on, and then hopefully we'll be able to show you. So for those of you who do not know how to tie a surgeon's knot or a triple surgeon's knot, it is one of the strongest knots and one of the easiest knots in tying, so that you can you know, put your leader together, and it's very quick and efficient out on the stream if you don't know how to tie blood knots. So the first thing you want to do, you want to have, I go for about 10 inches or more of your line that's coming from your rod tip, right? So, that's the heavier line. And then your next piece of material, this would be the 3X, right? Or the 4X that's attaching to the 3X. And I would do about the same amount of line, right? So I'd make an overlap like that. And then I leave just about 3 inches or a little bit less of line from the 4X. And so then what I want to do is make a loop. Can we see that? If I make a loop, can we see what that looks like? Yeah, I think you can see it there. And it's easiest then to take, that's your 3X, and you run it through this loop 3 times. 1, 2, 3, and that's nice and easy. And then you'll take your 4X, which is going to go down to your point fly, and run that through 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And so then we have this circle, if you can see it here, right? And what we want to do is wet it just a little bit with a little bit of your spit and just pull it tight together, right? And then after that, you pull the 2 long ends together. And what I do is I cinch it between my teeth to go towards the middle, and you see it makes a nice tight little knot right there, right? Now, as I was saying, you want to have a tag end. So this goes towards your rod. This is going towards your point fly. Now you have these nice long tags that are hanging off of here. And so what I would do normally is take my little snippets here, and I'll snip off that line. Now I have one tag that's hanging, and that's my 3X tag, right? Can we see my 3X tag? Yeah, there it is, right? And so it doesn't have to be this long. In this instance, remember I said I usually put about 10 inches or so. So that's about, an 8-inch tag, that is hanging there. So if this 4X is, another 3 feet, right? If it's 3 feet down to your point fly, and that's a weighted fly, that's really good, right? And so if you don't need to put weight on this, you still have it up here and you can use it. And that way, whenever you're fishing, skinnier water, that point fly, if it's weighted, can usually get down pretty quickly. But if you run into a situation where you're hiking, you come upon a deep pool, you want to get in a deep undercut bank somewhere very quickly, whether it's a tactical fishing decision or it's one that, you just simply need to go really deep because that's where the fish are holding, that point fly and its weight might not be enough. So rather than put it on the line itself where the fly is, because that will compromise that line as soon as you pinch it on, and I'll show you why, you want to put it on that tag end. And so, in this instance, this is a little too long for me, right? So I'll shorten it up by about half. And I would normally clip that, but I just wanted to do it for ease. So now it's about 5 inches long. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a weight into my little hemostats, right? And I'm going to put it about an inch or so up from the bottom, and I'm going to squish it on there, right? So I'm going to squish it really hard. Now that weight is on there, right? See the weight? Imagine if I pinch that onto the line and it compromises the structure of the line. Now we got some real problems, right? And you get a big fish on there, fight, snap, In this instance, it's on the tag and it won't snap. And so if it breaks off, who cares, right? But you can keep adding more and more split shot all the way up, and you can really make this thing sink fast. And the other part about this is it's so far ahead of your point fly, which is down about 3 feet away, right? This is down first, bouncing around. And even if it's down there bouncing around, chances are it's not going to get stuck and hooked onto anything. And you can have a less weighted fly on that point fly, and now it's fluttering behind it. And then the fly that comes off the hook shank of that, right, which might be your pheasant tail, it's like a size 14 or 16, you always have to go smaller, right? That can be unweighted. And now it has a natural appearance in the way that it drifts. And you got a great opportunity to catch a big fish in the deep stuff.
Your shot.
Hope this helps.
And still have your indicator float. And I'm going to say this. I don't know how many people out there use the New Zealand style wool and indicator system, but you can really make it large, right? And those ones that you buy at the store from Loon and others, they're just not enough necessarily to hold up over time, in fishing all day if you're doing a lot of heavy nymphing. So it's better to build your own and have the large tubes, and then that way you can build a very large head, and you go ahead and put your floating on it, right? Like your gink. You put your gink on it, and it should last you, good 4 hours or so. Unless you're banging out a lot of big fish, right? And then that's a good problem to have, and just go ahead and build yourself another indicator. But you want to have a big enough indicator on there if you're going deep. Don't use too small of an indicator. Remember, they're down deep. They're not going to see that indicator. Put something big on there. It might hinder your casting ability whenever you're going far, okay? But if you've got a nice rod that's got enough action in it, say like a Helios, 5-weight, F, it'll finesse it out there. And if not that, the D, to get it out there, it's a little stiffer. Right here, I have a 6-weight Recon, and it's a lot stiffer. It's a lot like the 5-weight D or the 6-weight D, Helios. It's not as sensitive, but it does have the same technology in it, and you can really zip it out there far. This is traditionally my my streamer fishing setup, but I use it a lot for nymphing whenever I'm doing heavy nymphing. So I know that was a lot, but let me go ahead and take one of these to water down a second. And I'd like to hear people's opinions on whether they set up like me or not, and if not, why, and perhaps put in the comments down below what type of setup you use whenever you're getting down deep. That's all for now. We always want to put those fish in the net, right? And I want to hear from you, partially because I just don't hear from anybody, but I'm trying to put out content that's useful for folks. Let me know if this was useful. Give me a thumbs up, join the team, become one of the members, and hopefully this fall you'll be able to get into some big ones. So take care.